Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Sports Memories Podcast. My name is Tim Hannon, and I am joined by
Steve Wirt,
the gregarious Steve Wirt.
gregarious. I'm like laughing and jolly and like I picture like the ghost of Christmas. What is it? Present from the Dickens novels. Like we
Was
like a
he
little
the was he
cup of
the gregarious one?
yeah, I think so. The little cup of well, you can't see it on the podcast, but I have a cup of cheer, which would just be water.
We're recording this at like 8 a.m. in the morning, so I'm hoping it's water.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, Tim.
So we did an episode a while back called The Lost Audio, where we dug up a bunch of clips that you may have never heard before. And folks really found that episode to be entertaining. So we thought, hey, let's do a sequel episode with even more clips that people will hopefully find entertaining
As you know, the sequel is always better than the original.
every time. I can't think of even one example where it wasn't. So let's kick this off with let's actually kick this off with Art Rooney, the Chief. And this is Art Rooney speaking. This is pretty late in his life, talking about the one thing in his lifetime that he could never quite figure out.
One thing in my lifetime that I could never figure out was why a person disliked another person because of his color, whether he was red, yellow, black, or white, or whether he was a Jew or a Christian, or whether he was a Protestant or a Catholic, that you disliked him because of the way he believed in God. I often said that I wondered what God would think.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah. I like the way he said yellow. He said yellow.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a chickens.
He did. He did.
Beyond that, that's that old school Northsiders stuff. That generation. I miss that generation. I do.
Yeah.
Although he's really a generation like he reminds me of my wife's grandmother, but she was more Dan Rooney's generation than the Chief. So, but still, they were good people. There aren't enough of them around, unfortunately. What's left is us filthy Gen Xers anymore. If we're running the world into the ground pretty good. I don't know. We kind of slid under the radar there, huh, Tim?
Yeah, I think so.
It seems like it's always boomers and millennials. We're like the silent generation.
We've got that sweet spot. Nobody worries about us.
It's just like when we were growing up. Like, here's dinner. Heat it up in the microwave. I'll see you when I get home at 11 o'clock tonight.
Yeah. I love kind of like his just common sense approach to that. I think like if you made a statement like that today on Twitter, it would be like standing on a pedestal, look how I don't know, socially aware I am kind of a thing, right? He's just like, I don't get it. Like why would you hate somebody just because their skin color is different or because
the sense of humility there.
Yeah. He's just kind of like, yeah.
It's just it's a what would I call it? A sincerely held belief with I think sometimes a lot of people like they call it virtue signaling. Like you don't really even believe that. You're just doing it to look good in front of other people.
Right. Right.
Very, in religious groups that you or I, well, I can't speak for Tim, but I knew I grew up in, it was a lot like that. People did a lot of stuff just to, I'm better than you, humans are. They're going to find something that I'm better than you.
Yeah, no.
I only do that in the realm of football or sports. So.
Yeah, no sense of virtue signaling or pride there. Just very, speaking plainly. I just cool words from the Chief years later. in our feuds episode that we did, we talked about the feud between Matthew Barnaby and Lyle Odeline when the Penguins played the New Jersey Devils in the 1999 playoffs. Steve, do you remember this?
Yes, there were questions about Lyle Odeline's wife or Lyle Odeline himself.
Yeah. Well, no, it was the other way around. It was actually Lyle Odeline. Well, it started with Barnaby calling Odeline Cornelius from Planet of the Apes.
That's right.
And then Odeline really like insulting Barnaby's wife, saying she was ugly or something to that effect. I mean, it went way beyond.
That's the ultimate like third grade playground comeback. That's like, why don't you just say his mom wears army boots or something? Remember? But was that like a big insult when you were in elementary school too? Like, your mom wears army boots.
I never got that one. I missed out on that one, Steve.
Well, I guess I had a much different elementary school than you did. Well, we did go to different elementary schools. So.
So yeah, all that stuff was happening in the media between games and that playoff series. Again, very personal. You'd think there'd be a lot of bitterness then between those two guys, but here's Barnaby and Odeline talking to each other 20 years later, and you're going to hear Barnaby. Barnaby's the guy speaking first.
Yeah, you jerk, you loser. One of my favorite lines ever was calling you Cornelius, and I didn't know you. And most guys are really bad at chirping. Like, you rip them, and they're like, you jerk, you loser, you suck. I'm like, I know I suck, man. I'm on the fourth line for a reason. I know I suck. Come up with something better. When I called you Cornelius and made reference to it, the best was your comeback, and I was actually reading it today.
Right.
Your comeback was, he shouldn't talk. He should look at his wife because she's nothing to look at. Now, I'm getting remarried. I have a girlfriend. You're right. You're completely right. But I fought more with you. Well, the funniest thing was coming into, I can't remember if it was game 2 or game 3 or later on in the series. And there was actually people in the stands in New Jersey with monkey outfits, 8 outfits with Mrs. Barnaby on the back. And I was like, you know what? Well done, sir. Well done.
Well, I had to throw something back, but I don't even know what your ex-wife looked like or anything. I just didn't know what to say. So I have to say you were not a fourth line player. I can tell you that.
So you gotta love
That's
that.
hilarious.
Yeah.
You poor. He even instigates with his own ex-wife. I mean,
Yeah, and that's classic hockey players too, right? Like, we hate each other, we're gonna beat each other's brains out, but then like, let's grab a beer.
Game's over.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it should be. That's. I mean, I kind of prefer that old. I don't know. I remember that growing. That's another thing. I guess we're just gonna reminisce about my childhood this whole episode. Apparently, but I just remember that you might get in a fight at even recess or lunch, and you'd be friends by the afternoon. Again, it was no big thing. So,
yeah, then that is something I do remember. Yes.
Maybe we should go back to that a little bit. The boys get it out of their system, but once again, nobody listens to me. Good reason.
Yeah, and like in this instance, Lyle Odeline later played for the Penguins, and I believe still lives in Pittsburgh. We talked in our X-Force episode we did about how he had that crazy infection that almost killed him. He was in a coma and everything, and the doctors at I think it was AGH, saved his life. And I guess Barnaby had reached out to him during that time. So again, I think those guys were probably just able to put things into perspective when it comes to hockey versus sort of real life, right?
For sure. Yeah. They are Canadian, so.
So Barnaby and Odeline had some bad blood. You know who else has some bad blood over the years? The Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Definitely a lot of bad blood in the 2000s, especially after the Carson Palmer injury and all that stuff. But the Steelers did have one guy on their team who is a true peacemaker. Here is Bengals wide receiver TJ Houshmandzadeh talking to LeVar Arrington, telling him a story from those days.
I remember one time Palomalu hit me, man. I'll never forget this. And I got up. I said, Troy, you hit like a bitch. LeVar, you know what he said to me?
What he say?
God bless you, TJ. And he has a high pitched voice. He's like, God bless you, TJ. I felt so bad. I never, ever, the rest of my career talked to him ever again.
So there you go. Troy Polamalu making even TJ Houshmandzadeh feel bad for trash talking.
That's classic Troy. Like, you know, once again, you know, kind of like in the Matthew Barnaby, you know, the take your head off, play your tail off during the game, but then after the game, it's, you know, it's over. It's just between the lines.
Yep.
Troy is like one of those players that it's such a disconnect between the player he is between the lines and the person he is off the field. It's almost like he's like two different people. So
very true. Sticking with the theme of Bengals remorse, the bad blood between the Steelers and Bengals ramped up tremendously in the 2010s, culminating with the Bengals imploding their entire division-winning 2015 season, all for the chance to concuss Antonio Brown and throw punches at assistant coach Joey Porter. Now, the guy who threw those punches was Bengals defensive back Pac-Man Jones. And after the game, Jones famously accused Antonio Brown of faking his concussion. He actually says that they should have awarded AB a Grammy because apparently Pac-Man thinks that the Grammy is an acting award. But that's beside the point. Jones said that AB winked at him as he left the field and that it was all a hoax into, I guess, tricking the refs into throwing a flag, even though like the flag literally came out right at the instant, you know, that Brown got hit. So I'm not even sure what the motive would have been for him faking it, but you know, I don't know, Steve. Pac-Man's a WVU guy, and I'm not sure that critical thinking is something they teach down there. So,
are you going to play the Dan Patrick clip?
Oh no! Actually, no. So what Steve's referring to is he went on Dan Patrick to say all that. The Dan
Patrick just sat there and was like, "Oh, really? Wow, it really happened." It's like, could you not be a fan of Cincinnati for 5 seconds, Dan, and like be a reporter and ask like, well, there's no video evidence of that. We don't have that on tape.
And also, why would he fake it when the refs threw the flag right away? Like, what did he have to get out of that?
Besides, and he never came back to the game. I mean,
right. But well, so what ends up happening is that the next week the Steelers are playing in Denver in the divisional playoffs, and Pac-Man says, "Oh yeah, he's going to play in that game. He's fine. He's faking it." And Pac-Man even says he'll apologize if AB doesn't actually play. Well, sure enough, AB is rolled out of that game in Denver. He was actually injured after all. So does Pac-Man ever apologize?
It's part of the conspiracy. The Steelers decided to throw their whole season in Denver just to make Pac-Man joke.
Just as a ploy against the Bengals. So does Pac-Man ever apologize like he said he would? Let's find out.
AB, my apology, my brother. I'm a man on my word, man. Been doing a little traveling that would take me so long, and I apologize sincerely.
So there you go, Steve. Pac-Man is a man of his word, a real stand-up guy.
What is that like from like 20 years later? He's like,
no, it was the week of. He did put that on his Instagram. Looks like he's like helping somebody move or something at the time. Just like, by the way,
is he like the idiot that threw the all the money up in the strip club and tried to get it back? I can't remember if that was him or one of the other. That might have been another player, but
yeah, I thought that was somebody else from West Virginia, but don't quote me on that.
It probably, but it wouldn't surprise me. I might be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll apologize, Pac-Man. I will apologize if it wasn't you who did that.
So yeah, but Pac-Man apologizes. So there you go. Not often remembered in that controversy. So
Yeah, I don't remember him apologizing because he didn't go on Dan Patrick. Why didn't he go on Dan Patrick and say that instead of like some little internet video? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why this episode is lost audio because most people don't remember.
But why
that.
didn't Dan Patrick have him on to correct him? You can tell that maybe I don't like a certain reporter. I respected him until that moment. I really did. I thought, oh, he's just a standard national. And then once that happened and he just went along with it, I was like, this is pathetic. That's a joke.
Well, he probably got good sound bites. I mean, that's what it's all about now is you can clip a sound bite.
Well, you know what? He can have fun on whatever like low rent, internet thing he's on. He's like on like, I don't even know if you can find his show anymore. Unless you wanted to. I mean, whatever.
So hopefully for Lost Audio Volume 3, we will get a Dan Patrick apology.
Yeah. Well, he'd be like, what do I have to apologize for? I didn't say it.
So Steeler Bengal controversies are well publicized for sure. One current controversy that people may not remember all that well centers around the national anthem. And no, I'm not talking about Colin Kaepernick and that whole mess. I'm talking about Bobby Vinton. Steve, do you know who Bobby Vinton is?
Yes, he was a like crooner kind of singer from like the 50s. Actually, funny enough, in Cannonsburg, there's a boulevard named called Bobby Vinton Boulevard. The McDonald's is on it. And then the McDonald's, they have a Bobby Vinton like Hall of Fame-ish full of memorabilia.
So nice.
He sang a song called, I think, Blue Velvet was his big hit. And why I know so much about Bobby Vinton off the top of my head? Seriously, that was all off the top of my head, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's impressive. I didn't know any of that, so that's impressive.
Blue Velvet. There you go.
So as Steve said, Bobby Vinton's a Pittsburgh guy. His nickname was the Polish Prince.
Nice.
Did you know that?
That's alliteration for you.
It is. As Steve said, he had a bunch of hits back in the day.
I only remember Blue Velvet. That's the only one I really remember, right? Yeah.
Okay. Hang on one second.
She wore blue velvet.
Good filler. So in 1990, the Pirates are in the National League Championship Series, and they asked Bobby Vinton to sing the national anthem.
And it sounds like that could work.
Yeah, it could, but it goes a little sideways. Here is the end of that, and I'm only clipping the end. He was already really stumbling his way through it at this point, but here, take a listen.
That star-spangled banner, ye brave old land.
Those aren't the words.
For the land
I will say this, in Bobby Vinton's defense, he had to be in his 70s, right? How old was he when he did that?
Well, he actually...
He was like 20 years old, 1950, right? And that's 40 years later.
Yeah, he does later apologize, and he actually says he had the flu. He wasn't feeling well, and he just had an off night. But you know what, Steve? That's really not the controversy. The controversy is what CBS announcer Jack Buck says on the air right after the anthem ends.
Okay, yes, I remember this now. Okay.
Well, when you're Polish and live in Pittsburgh, you can do anything you want with the words.
Woo!
So that ticks a lot of people off.
Yeah, the Polish American Society or somebody, one of those groups got ticked off.
Yeah, the president of the Polish Falcons of America in Pittsburgh does, as you said, issue a strongly worded statement against CBS and Jack Buck. Jack Buck does apologize, says he didn't mean any offense by that.
Is this the part of the podcast where we tell Polish jokes?
No, because then the Polish Falcons of America will be contacting us next.
Well, I mean, we already know about submarines and battleships and, sending a rocket ship to the sun at night. Yeah. Yeah.
That used to be a big thing back at that time too, was Polish jokes. And so I wonder if people were like, there was kind of more sensitivity even then to it, especially when you have a guy on national TV, in front of a national
People just
audience
get
like that.
offended about I think the Polish Falcons needed to chill. As a person whose son had their first birthday at the Polish Cadets, I think I can speak for the Polish community, although I am not any percent Polish in any sort of way.
I'm sure they'll accept you as their spokesperson.
Yeah, especially since I'm like mostly German, so we're just taking a
no bad blood there.
Them again, so
Yeah.
they're really probably happy about that.
So
My wife's Polish, so there you go. Right?
Okay. Okay. Steve,
I have many Polish friends, Tim.
So Bobby Vinton, a famous Pittsburgh native. Another famous Pittsburgh native is comedian Dennis Miller. And in 2001, ABC makes the decision to add Miller to its Monday Night Football announcing booth. And a lot of people think that's a questionable decision, and it generates a lot of buzz, which was no doubt the point, right? Was to just get people watching and talking about it. Anyway, when Monday Night Football comes to Pittsburgh that season, the city of Pittsburgh has a whole ceremony for Miller, and here is him talking about that during the game that night.
Forget about Halloween in Pittsburgh. This is all they're talking about. Look at that sign on the road today. Welcome home, Dennis Miller. Mayor Tom Murphy giving Dennis the key to the city about 20 minutes ago. Let's play some football. The terrible towel. Welcome home, Bendu.
Very touching, Albino. They did give me the key to the city, and surprisingly, it works. I've been going around to some of the nicer homes in town and taking items that I fancy.
It's a joke. I like Dennis Miller. Whatever happened to Dennis Miller? Boy, he's fallen off the... He used to do a bit with Bill O'Reilly on Bill O'Reilly's show, like a long time ago. I think they went on tour together at one point, or I don't know.
I have no idea, but I like that little quip about the key to the city. Just thought that was funny.
It's a Dennis Miller joke. It's a joke that only 5% of the population gets. We call it the Dennis Miller ratio, which is it's a joke I stole from The Simpsons.
Well, let's talk about another broadcaster, Myron Cope. We just did an episode where we talked to Myron's daughter, and we talked about how he often caused controversy. Here's a clip of Myron in 1970 talking about Barbara Jo Rubin. Now, Barbara Jo Rubin was a jockey, and she actually had to go to court to get licensed because in those days, the jockeys were all men. She then becomes the first woman ever to win a professional horse race, and that was in 1969, so it was like right before the time of this audio. And Steve, listen to this and tell me, do you think Myron gets canceled for this today? I think he at least causes a stir with these comments. Take a listen.
The one who made the biggest splash was a pleasant-looking, though not especially sexy girl named Barbara Jo Rubin. Now, at the time she started out, I had the temerity to predict on my radio show that women who become jockeys will end up looking like the horses they ride. At any rate, Barbara Jo Rubin apparently is not going to end up looking like a horse because after less than 1 year on the track, she's washed up. She has bum knees. Now, here was a girl who demanded to be accepted equally with men, but in no time at all she has bum knees, and it wasn't her doing the running, it was the horses. So what we have here is an indication, and even in those sports in which an object does the work, women are biologically incapable of competing with men. Their insistence upon trying may be attributed to the only feminine characteristic that such women seem to have left, namely their insatiable desire to attract attention.
Oh, wow. Zinger. Whoa. Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, I'm just going to leave that one right there. Okay, then.
So a little
There's a lot
context.
there to unpack, Tim. I mean, wow, where did you find that?
I dug it out of the archives. So
I
let me
bet,
give
I bet Myron, well, he's passed away, so what does he care? But yeah, ooh, yikes.
Well, let me give a little context that might help kind of ease those comments a little bit. This was part of a staged debate between Myron and Eleanor Kane. If you don't know who Eleanor Kane is, she's a pretty remarkable woman. She was an NFL sports writer back when those jobs were exclusively for men. And she had quite an uphill climb to get there. NFL Films actually did a great story on her a while back that we'll link on our website. So Eleanor Kane, a real pioneer in the world of sports media for women. And this was Myron and her debating on a woman's place in sports. But Myron and Eleanor Kane, they were also friends. They had actually traveled together to NFL training camps in the summers whenever Myron wrote for Sports Illustrated. And there was also, as you could hear, there was an audience watching this. So I do think part of this is Myron just kind of egging on Eleanor Kane. And if you listen to the whole thing, she actually gives it right back to him. So it probably sounds meaner than it really is. I think part of it was just the two of them kind of messing with each other. I don't think it was just Myron flat out being a chauvinist. I think he was kind of trying to egg her on a little bit because the debate was supposed to be about, women's places in sports.
Oh, that's a whole can of worms. And that's a lot of worms that I'm going to leave in that can, Tim. And good for Myron. And I don't know, once again, as sincere as the first clip was by the Chief, I'm not sure of the sincerity of this clip. So maybe he was just saying it for, listeners or, get some attention.
That's also 1970.
Kind of ironic since he claimed that about women, but
yeah.
But I don't know what to say. That's wild. That's wild stuff.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine that coming out today? I mean, that would be.
Well, I mean, maybe on the internet. I mean, you do see some stuff like that, sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, but if somebody was like employed by
you could get it. You could do a lot of. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts in my head about that, but this isn't a political, social thing. So and I don't really want to get into that here. So
No,
I don't think anybody really cares about a guy at Beachview's thoughts on the world besides sports world. So
yeah,
the sports.
we'll just leave it at make of that clip what you will. But I thought it was just definitely interesting audio, if nothing else.
I wish I would have heard her response, her egging him on. I would have liked to hear that.
Yeah. Like I said, she's no wallflower. I mean, she's just messing with him the whole time. She's talking about the two of them riding in the car together to training camps and making fun of him. And it's like I said, it's a spirited debate, but you can tell that they're also like chummy with each other. They're not, it's not like a presidential debate where the two people clearly have contempt for each other. All right. Myron was, of course, part of the Steelers radio broadcast. And Steve, a little while ago, we did that episode on Pittsburgh sports TV intros. And one of the clips that I really wanted to play in that episode is the intro to the Jack Fleming, Myron Cope Steelers broadcasts, which I grew up listening to a ton. But that episode was TV sports intros. And of course, this was a radio intro. So guess what? I'm going to play it here. And I'm curious, and please let me know, you folks listening out there, let me know on Facebook or via email. Am I like the only one who very distinctly remembers this theme music? Take a listen.
This is Jack Fleming, voice of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Listen for all the Steelers action all season long here on Radio 1250 WTAE. Join Myron Cope and me right here this Sunday. This afternoon, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers against the New York Jets in New York. Pro Preview will be on the air at 12 noon, followed by the Chuck Kroll Show.
Wow. No, Tim, I can't say I remember that. That's funny that it was on AM, too, not even FM. It was on AM radio.
Right.
into 1250, which if you lived in like Butler County or, good luck. Good luck
Yeah.
with that. You weren't hearing the Steelers play the Jets. Who won that game, by the way, Tim? Was that the Cherry Bradshaw game?
I have no idea.
I'm curious. No, we'll never know.
But I mean, you're right. That was back in the day too, when you turn down the TV and turn on the AM radio, or even Steve, do you remember that even at the games, people that went to the games sometimes would wear those big old school headphone things and listen to Myron.
Well, they would always
the
know
game.
stuff too, like what happened there? Like, oh yeah, they're saying, Joe Green got hurt. Or,
Yeah.
The ball bounced off Tatum and went to Franco.
Yeah. No, that's very true. That was like your only way. You couldn't, look it up on Twitter in the stadium. You had to
I
ask the
went
guy.
on my cell phone that didn't exist and typed into a cell tower that didn't exist on the internet that didn't exist. Never mind mobily internet. Yeah.
A guy we haven't talked about a lot on this podcast is Michael Jordan. Pretty sure everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. Here's Jordan getting an award for Basketball Player of the Decade, and he decides to acknowledge one of his good friends at the podium.
I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. I don't know much about hockey, but I'm a fan of hockey. Good friends, Mario, who I consider we came in at the same time, 84, won a championship at the same time, MVP at the same time, which I have so much respect for.
Yeah, fun story about Mario Lemieux and Michael Jordan. When Mario made his comeback in 2001, remember it was all shrouded in secrecy. He was like practicing in secret and nobody knew about it. Well, one of the few people
practicing with Michael Jordan on the ice.
Well, that would have been a more fun story, but the fun story is actually that Michael Jordan is one of the few people that Mario told about it ahead of time. And then when Jordan was contemplating a comeback later that year, he actually consulted Mario Lemieux to get his thoughts, and no word on whether or not Mario told him I wouldn't do that. Coming back to play for the Washington Wizards, but he did ask Mario what he thought before he made that decision. So those two guys, pretty good friends, actually.
I didn't know that. That's obviously at the ESPYs or one of those awards.
Yeah, it was the ESPYs, and they did like I'm guessing that must have been 1999 because they were doing like decade awards, basketball player of the decade, football player of the decade, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Steve, one of my favorite TV shows of all time is Quantum Leap. Did you ever watch Quantum Leap?
Yes, I've watched many of the episodes.
Okay, so you're familiar with it. It's for
I've
those of
watched
you
the
that-
last episode too, which is kind of depressing.
It is, yeah. It kind of was.
And he's stuck into Nora, so whatever.
That's right.
Which makes it more depressing.
The show aired in the 1990s, and if you never watched it, the premise of the show is there's this guy named Sam Beckett who time travels via leaping into the bodies of other people in the past. And then in the present, there's this guy named Al who can appear to Sam in the form of a hologram that only Sam can see and hear to give him information about the person he leapt into, etc. So here's some audio from an episode in which Sam leaps into a football player from the 1960s, and Al comes in the form of a hologram to give Sam some information about that.
Where have you been? I've been watching Super Bowl 30. Oh, Sam, the Steelers are down by 3. You wouldn't believe it. Al, this is the only game I care about.
So Al.
Wait a minute. When did this episode come out?
So Al.
No,
Al,
wait a minute. When did this episode come out?
Hold on,
before
we're
we go
getting
any
there.
further.
We're getting there. So Al is in the present in the 1990s. He's talking about how he's watching Super Bowl 30 and how the Steelers are only down by 3, presumably right before O'Donnell throws that fatal interception, right? And that's kind of cool. They worked in something from real life, something that was Pittsburgh related, right? Well, Steve, to answer your question, this episode aired on January 17th, 1990.
What the heck?
6 years.
Wow.
6 years before Super Bowl 30 was even played.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Wow. Although the Steelers were never really down by 3.
No, they were. When
were?
O'Donnell threw that second interception,
okay.
it was
They were down
20.
by 3.
It was 20-17 Dallas when O'Donnell threw that second interception. And it was late in the game in the fourth quarter, just like Al said.
NFL isn't fixed.
There you go. Proof of the script. The script got leaked to Quantum Leap producers, and they put it in the episode.
They have it 5 years out.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
It's insane.
Yeah.
No, there's no way they didn't go back and edit that. That's the Cubbies won the World Series over Miami. Oh, come on. That's crazy.
The show actually, you talked about that last episode. The show ended in 1993.
The guy who produced it was from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Donald.
Actually, it was from the Nora, actually. Yeah,
he was from Cokeburg. He was from Cokeburg, but it was close.
I thought he was from okay.
It was yeah. That guy's name was Donald Belisario. Is the guy you're talking about? So
he's done a ton of shit. I think he did JAG. He does he do NCIS. He's done a ton of stuff.
He's done a ton of stuff, and there were a couple other Pittsburgh references worked in over the years to Quantum Leap, but that one's pretty crazy. Super Bowl 30, Steelers down by 3 in the fourth quarter, and he's so yeah. So that's an interesting window into something historic. Speaking of history, and I know, Steve, this is something you often talk about. One of the coolest things you can get with history is an eyewitness account, right?
Well, that's the most reliable normally.
The most reliable, and just like it's so much different than reading it in a book, right? Hearing from somebody that was actually there. Eleanor Dreyfus Benswanger was the daughter of Pirates owner Barney Dreyfus. And when he died, Eleanor's husband, Bill, ran the team. So her family basically owned the Pirates for pretty much the entire first half of the 20th century. And she had a ton of involvement in the team. Even after the team was sold to the Gale Brace, she still attended games all the way up to when the team was playing in Three Rivers Stadium. Here's Eleanor talking about when her family first came to Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, and of course I was a very small child. There were at that time 12 clubs in the league, and they decided to reduce the league to 8 clubs. So my father brought the Louisville Club to Pittsburgh, purchased Pittsburgh Club, and consolidated the 2 clubs. That is how we came to live in Pittsburgh. My parents were both very much interested in music, and that is how they met. They both lived in Louisville, but they didn't know one another until, I think it was in the spring of 1892. They both were on a train going to Cincinnati for the May Music Festival there. That's how they met, and the following October they were married. So the family came to Pittsburgh, and of course, I was a very small child at the time. We lived at the Hotel Shenley for 5 years. Then we moved to the East End.
I just found that fascinating, hearing the voice of someone describing
5 years. That's wild. It's such a different. It's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
But I guess it makes sense. I don't know. Was that pre-1900 then, when she's saying they moved? I don't know.
It was 1899 whenever he, that thing she talked about when they decided to
buy the team,
to consolidate the Louisville and the Pittsburgh teams together.
That was 99.
So 1899 to 1900. So it was around that time that they would have been moving to Pittsburgh.
Turn of the century, Tim.
Yeah. But I just found that fascinating, like hearing the voice of someone describing something that happened in the 1890s, and it's like their voice describing it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who knew they had music festivals. They both met at a concert.
They met on the train, not in the mosh pit.
And they were dropping gummies at the concert.
I'm sure that's what the 1892 Cincinnati
music. No, we got to say it like her, Cincinnati.
Yeah. I'm sure that was a wild time. I can't imagine what that was like. Whew,
you don't know. Maybe they got into some rye whiskey and things got.
Yeah. Hey, that's right. People have always been people. So
yeah.
One guy who definitely wasn't alive in the 1890s is Jerome Bettis. Here's the bus. The bus talking groin injuries with David Letterman circa 2001.
I'm a little banged up, but a lot better. I had a groin injury. So,
Really?
I don't know if you've ever had a groin injury.
Well, sure I have. What kind of guy do you think I am? I got an injured groin right now. Yeah.
Well, doing what I do, I can't have an injured groin. You probably can do this with an injured groin.
I've actually injured it here.
That was a funny little exchange, I thought. So
back when late night talk shows used to be funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Notice how he didn't like jump up and say Bush sucks. Yeah. Like actually like joke her out.
You know, not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I really enjoy the podcast now so much more than like that format of the 5-minute interview of someone plugging their movie. Because when you have, like, I really love Conan O'Brien's podcast, for example, and he's a guy that did 20 plus years of these kinds of late night interviews, and people can actually talk, and it's not just 5 minutes of trying to come up with like a funny anecdote, right? So
yeah,
it's
less of a bit, I guess.
Right.
You get like
you're not performing.
You get to know the person.
Yeah. Yep. We talked about Art Rooney earlier. Here is Lynn Swann interviewing Raiders owner Al Davis at the Chiefs' funeral in 1988. Now,
Al Davis wow.
Yeah, I was just going to say, keep in mind, if you're too young to remember, the Raiders and Steelers at one point really hated each other. Al Davis once submarined an entire Steelers season by filing bogus defamation lawsuits against the Steelers. The Raiders thought they got cheated in the Immaculate Reception. The Steelers thought the Raiders played dirty. And Lynn Swann was kind of at the center of all that, remember?
Yeah, he was definitely the brunt, the guy they picked on. The guy they thought they could pick on and get away with it, especially, what's his name? The one?
George Atkinson.
Yeah.
And Jack Tatum, I think, both those guys. So what does Al Davis have to say here to Lynn Swann, a guy that the Raiders, again, quite literally tried to murder at Art Rooney's funeral? Let's hear that.
A while back, your wife was gravely ill, and Art Rooney was someone who called and basically was by your side emotionally the whole time, wasn't he?
Yes, he was that kind of guy. He had just human compassion for everything. Carol Davis, my wife, was in a coma for approximately 15 days, and I had the entire strength of the National Football League and the whole country behind me, and particularly Mr. Rooney, who would call regularly and just keep the vigil with me, although he was in Pittsburgh.
Goodness, boy, they don't make them like the Chief anymore, do they?
No.
How about practicing what you preach? Oh man, what a
well, and that incident.
Oh boy, that's impressive.
That incident that Davis is referring to there, where his wife suffered a massive heart attack and was in a coma for weeks, that happened in 1979. So that was literally right at the height of all this Steelers Raiders hatred. That was right after Al Davis had sued the Steelers, right? And the Chief is just. It's not like he's just, doing like a token phone call or sending like a letter or something. He's literally staying on the phone with them in the hospital room just so Al Davis has somebody to process all that with.
Yeah. They don't make them like that anymore. They really do.
Yeah.
We all could learn a lot from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Side note there, Carol Davis, not only
did she pass away after all that? Or
no. No, she not only did she completely recover, Steve, but as of the time of this recording, she's still living today.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So is that Mark, the owner of the Raiders now? Is that his mother?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep. So that was Lynn Swann as a broadcaster. Lynn Swann, of course, the guy that made a long career out of being a poised, well-spoken TV personality. He even ran for governor at one point. But let's hear from Lynn Swann, the player, or more specifically, Lynn Swann, the rookie wide receiver who caught the game-winning touchdown pass in the 1974 AFC Championship game. And this is him being asked in the locker room after the game to walk the listening audience through what happened on that play. And Swan later admitted that he and the boys may have knocked back a few celebratory beverages before he does this interview. Take a listen.
Chuck looked at me and said, Swan, go back in there and run the eye cut. I ran in the game and said, Terry, I can beat him on the eye cut. Terry said, what? I said, call full split right 42. He called the play. I made 2 steps outside, broke across the middle, ran to the back of the end zone. Terry poised, waited to the last minute, fired one of the linebackers. I leaped up, caught it in my hand, looked down the ground, tapped 2 feet in, and it was a touchdown. From that moment on, victory was ours. Pittsburgh was the happiest place in the world, and the rings shall be ours. Hey!
That's great.
He wasn't that drunk.
I mean, you know,
he was just happy.
He was just happy.
Yeah, they have a bus, a team bus that they're gonna like to play out. Come on, let the man celebrate. He won the Super Bowl.
I actually cut a big chunk of that out for time. He actually does a whole setup about how he wanted to run the play. So he told Bradshaw, but then Chuck Noll sent him like a 2 tight end set. So then he had to talk to Noll. I mean, it was a really long story. It was definitely the guy at the bar at 1 a.m. like telling a story. But yeah, it was, you know, again, he was, and again, like today, all those post-game interviews are so vanilla. It's like, walk us through what happened on that play. Well, you know, we had the right formation and, you know, the defense has really played strong. And, you know, I mean, it's just a bunch of vanilla quotes. So kind of entertaining.
Because everybody rips you apart when if you said something,
yes,
it would live forever on the internet. Well, I guess this will now too.
Yeah, but at the time, no one even thought twice about that. Even if they would have had the internet, I don't know that people would have really made a big deal about it. You know, now that would be viral. And remember, this is between the championship game and Super Bowl, so you can even imagine like how much more that would have been magnified. But
Swan got drunk at you.
Yeah, it is what it is. Like you said,
How dare he? I'm clutching my pearls.
So we got Lynn Swann the broadcaster, Lynn Swann the player. Just to complete the Lynn Swann trilogy, how about Lynn Swann the actor? Steve, we were talking about 90s TV shows. Do you remember the sitcom Family Matters?
Oh, is that with the Urkel?
Yep, that was the Urkel one. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's
I'm not a fan. I didn't really watch it, but I was familiar. I am familiar.
Well, here's Lynn Swann playing Greg on Family Matters.
Now, that way we.
Great. Yeah.
Rachel, I need to know something. We've gone out several times now, and I think we're good for each other.
Well, I think so too, Ray.
You do? Then why do I feel you're always backing away from me?
I don't think I'm...
Rachel, I'd like for this relationship to go somewhere. But if you're not ready for that, well, I'd like for you to let me know now. That way we don't waste each other's time.
I am ready for a relationship.
Oh? Then why are you still wearing your wedding ring? I'll call you tomorrow. Sleep tight.
You too.
I think Lynn Swann should have won a Grammy for that performance. Or maybe an Emmy. Since that's the award that TV actors get.
Deep drama on Family Matters too.
What the heck? I didn't realize. No wonder I didn't like that show. I thought it was all like Lass and Steve Urkel doing silly stuff. I guess he was the comedic relief.
Yeah, I guess so, because, you know.
But the father was the cop from Die Hard, right?
He was, yeah.
And he was a cop on
that show, yeah. Yeah, Carl Winslow. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, hey, why was she still wearing the wedding ring? I mean, you know, legit question.
I mean, if Lynn Swann asked me out, I wouldn't wear my wedding ring.
sticking with the Steelers here, in 1972, they made a play that you may have heard of. It's called the Immaculate Reception. Whenever you see that play,
Did that happen? What?
1972. I just said that. Pay attention, Steve. Whenever you see that play, you typically hear the Jack Fleming call from the Steelers radio broadcast, or you will hear the Kirk Gowdy call from the NBC television broadcast. But did you know? Well, hold on. There's actually two other calls to that play. The first one we're going to hear is from Mutual Radio, which was the national radio broadcast. And the announcer here is a guy named Bob Reynolds. Take a listen.
And now it is all wrapped up in this one. It is 4th down, still 10 to go. Pittsburgh's ball at their own 40-yard line, 22 seconds left to play. Back goes Bradshaw. He's looking. He's in trouble back there. He rolls out to the right. He looks. He goes deep, and it is batted away. Takes one, cutting to the hair. Of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Michael Harris at the 30. He's at the 25, the 20, the 15, the 10, the 5, the touchdown for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just think the talking there. Take over here to the door. You can't hear me. Franco into the end zone on the 60-yarder is being completely bombed as the clock shows only 5 seconds left. My, oh my, oh my.
So that's what all the millions of people that weren't in the stadium were listening to if they lived in another state.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, that's what they would have heard. And two things about that. One, like they always talk about the roar of the crowd when that happened. Like even Terry Bradshaw, who was flat on his back and didn't see the play, he talks about he heard this roar from the crowd. You can really hear it in that clip. Yeah. I mean, it like drowns out.
Well, he even says that. He said, "You can't hear me." Yeah, you hear.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. I'm not going to play more of that clip, but later on, he and whoever the other guy was, they actually start talking about like, was that a legal catch? Because the rule is you can't, tip it to your own player. So they picked up on that pretty quick, which was kind of also interesting. So the other call of the Immaculate Reception is the one Steve was referring to. It's the Raiders radio.
This
call.
Guy's famous too. Like he's done a lot of like the Sea of Hands call, and
yep.
I guess he called A's games because Holy Toledo that's the Holy Toledo guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Guy's name.
The Holy Rollers play. Yeah, he's been there for a lot of famous Raiders plays.
Yeah, and the Old Man Willie from the Super Bowl.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. They're going all the way. Old Man Willie. So
I don't know his name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, his name is good. His name is Bill King. Again, Bill King, like Steve said,
he's kind of a legend in I think Oakland.
He is. Really, yeah. He is, and you're right. He called A's games. He called Raiders games.
Well, because at the A's game, like they have a little sign that says Holy Toledo, which I don't know if they're taking to their next stadium. Maybe they won't.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it would like light up. I mean, now the A's only hit one home run the whole game that I was there, but it lit up when they hit a home run.
I think there's even a call of him calling the Kirk Gibson home run, the famous Kirk Gibson home run.
Yeah, because that would have been
against the A's. Yeah. So again, pretty famous dude. Voice heard, especially in those old NFL Films clips over and over again. So why don't we ever get Bill King's call of the Immaculate Reception? Well, take a listen. This might explain why.
Back he goes. They've got one back out, 4-man pattern. He looks deep. He's in trouble. He's run to the right by Jones. He reverses, steps up, throws way upfield. Batted down by Tatum, and it's taken. Goes in the air by Duke. Duke with the 40. Duke with the no. It's Franco Harris. Harris goes all the way for a touchdown. I don't believe it. Franco Harris goes 40 yards. The place has exploded. The place has exploded. A Raider defensive back knocks the ball up in the air at about the 30. Way back towards the midfield. Franco Harris caught the ball at the 40. Started running. Nobody realized he had the ball. He raced 40 yards for a touchdown. The Raiders are protesting something, but it's to no avail.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah.
Toledo. I guess because, everybody makes a mistake.
Yeah, and in Bill King's universe, Frankie Fuqua caught the Immaculate Reception. So,
Not a big fan. But he had a lot of other really great calls.
oh yeah, I don't want to
He's a
denigrate the
legendary
guy.
broadcaster.
I mean, it's hard 32 and 33, right? That was Fico was 33, so it's an easy mistake to make. So
Maybe it was Merrill Hodge.
all right, well, let's end this episode with the Steelers fight song. And you might say, but Tim, the Steelers don't have a fight song, which I would say, well, then what do you call this?
This is Tom Tracy, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here's the Pittsburgh Steelers fight song.
Kind of like a little, I don't know how to describe, like, it's very college in its feel, but like more like you ever listen to like marches by like John Philip Sousa?
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah.
Like Stars and Stripes Forever.
Yeah. Yeah, this is actually from a 1960 record album called the National Football League Marching Songs, conducted by Bernie Green.
Well, that's why it feels like a march, because it is a march.
Yeah.
So.
And the guy who introduced that was Tom Tracy, who at the time was a running back for the Steelers. So there you go, Pittsburgh Steelers fight song, Steve. Maybe we can get that played at Acrisure Stadium here next year.
I would be impressed. Maybe they'll have a throwback to the 60s and they can play that.
Maybe. All right, folks. So that's our list of Lost Audio Volume 2. Hopefully someday. I did cut a lot of things from here, so I'm already collecting stuff for Volume 3.
We could have a trilogy. Yes,
we could have a trilogy. So we'll roll that out at some point. But in the meantime, thanks everybody for listening. Please check us out on Facebook. Please subscribe to the show. Please, if your podcast service that you listen to has a thing where you can rate the show, that really helps people find us as well. We will catch you all next time.